Welcome, everyone out there who has joined us for this very exciting online event. Before we kick it off, as usual, I'm going to start with a few housekeeping rules. Please make sure that you turn your audio off at all times, except for the speakers when they are speaking. And also please turn your video off. I am encouraging all of you who have joined here to interact. And doing that, as many of us have learned the last year and a half, we use the chat function at the bottom. You find it at the bottom of your screen. You there can pose questions. There will be shared materials, and you can also respond to each other. I'll also make you aware of, as you may see, that this session will be recorded and will be available for viewing after the event at the Global Teaching Insights website, which also will be posted in the chat. And with that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Haldis Holst. I am Deputy General Secretary of Education International. On behalf of UNESCO and OECD, I sincerely want to welcome you all again to this second session of the Conversations on Teaching for Climate Action.
Так я написала, что там
between UNESCO and the OECD and Education International. The initiative aims to share inspiring practices for teaching climate change. On the Global Teaching Insights platform, teachers have been submitting videos that document their own initiatives on how to better teach climate change and empower students for climate actions. These are videos that can inspire us, because we all know that contexts are different around the world, but the challenge of climate change we have in common. We know as teachers that we don't copy paste others' ideas, but we are inspired by them. We are motivated by them. We get ideas from them and we transform them into our own classrooms. So if you are a teacher with an initiative that you are keen to share, please add your own good ideas and practices via the link that we have provided in the chat box. We have a very short deadline to prepare for the next session. That is already on October 10th, so hurry up. In our previous session, we talked about what or which pedagogies support student empowerment for climate action. And they include interdisciplinary as well as whole school approaches for teaching about and learning about climate change. So in this session, we are going to discuss just that. What if climate education was taught across subjects and grades? Because climate change is a challenge that affects every facet of life. And I would like to share with you a short quote from the new curriculum in my country, which is Norway. It was introduced last year, and they've introduced an interdisciplinary subject, which is titled Sustainable Development. And I quote, "Sustainable development as an interdisciplinary topic in school shall help the pupils to understand basic dilemmas and developments in society and how they can be dealt with. Sustainable development refers to protecting life on Earth and providing for the needs of people who live here now and providing for the needs and without destroying the possibilities for future generations to fill their needs. Sustainable development is based on the understanding that social, economic, and environmental conditions are interconnected. our lifestyles and resource consumption have local, regional, and global consequences.
Yeah.
So if this is interconnected in real life, shouldn't it be interconnected when we teach? So in this session, we're going to talk to teachers who have experience in teaching climate change from an interdisciplinary perspective. These teachers sent videos where they shared how they have been teaching climate change through the lens of various subjects, as well as extracurricular activities that involved local communities. It is my privilege to briefly now introduce these teachers. We have Ana Pinedo from Cangas, Spain, who is joining us with her colleague, Irene Past-Johnson, and she has submitted a video that addresses how do we deal with some of the new waste that we have started to produce during the pandemic. Reusing, recycling face masks and empowering their students of communicating this. We also have with us Nita Tseng from the United States, who teaches climate change by using through mathematics. And she addresses how you can make the issue of fractions relevant to such an extent that the students want to learn them because they see that this is a very valuable tool in their society, also in working against climate change. The links to their videos, and I encourage you to watch them, are in the chat box. We also have with us Dr. Nagata, Dr. Yoshi Nagata, Vice Director of the Sacred Heart Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of the Sacred Heart in Tokyo, Japan. He is a pioneer of education for sustainable development and has worked on education with the UNESCO for more than 15 years. He is also part of the UNESCO Associated Schools Network. He is an expert on alternative pedagogies. So we welcome Dr. Nagata. It's an interesting people we have here today. So please pose questions to them as we move forward, and we will try to address as many as we can directly or in the chat. But to get us started, we're going to do a poll to make sure that we get a sense of our audience's opinion. So I have a colleague backstage who will share the first poll question. Should flash on your screen, it's on my screen. Which subject do you think climate change should be taught in? I'll give you a few seconds to press your buttons. So I think we have a result here. I'm trying to scroll down my full screen here. A great majority, the greatest majority, agrees that they should be taught in all of the above. Otherwise, we have science, geography, high on the score. Some on civics. Not very many on mathematics, and not very many on art or history. Interesting. I wonder why. So let's go into our panel and start our questions. And I'm going to start with Nita, our mathematics teacher. Do you think that every teacher can teach for climate action or climate change, including mathematics teachers?
Yes, Haldis, thank you so much. At first, I saw the poll and with mathematics, it was 0%. And I was like, oh no, did anyone watch my video? But I'm glad that when I scrolled to the bottom that almost 80% of us chose all of the above. And to answer this question, I have to say, yes, I believe that every teacher across all subjects and grade levels can and should teach climate education. For me, I think that the need is to offer teachers more resources, more training, and an incentive structure to use those resources and to undergo that training.
Mhm. Oh, we have some music here. That's great, and underpins the poll, I think, Nita. That and perhaps the reason why many hadn't pressed mathematics because they'd pressed all.
Mhm.
So we get the entrance. But what I'm wondering, what impacts or behavioral changes have you seen on your students at the school and the local community since you started your climate education initiatives? And I would like to add, if people haven't watched your video, they should.
Thank you so much. So I've been a math teacher for 10 years, but only recently have I started caring about climate education. And so I'm very much still learning. And I think this is something that's really important to accept, right? That we're all learning about how to teach and learn about climate education. And so more recently, I've been integrating climate issues, environmental justice issues, sustainability issues into fundamental mathematics skills. And what I've noticed is that the idea, at least in the United States, is that we need math to understand climate education, to teach about climate. What I've noticed in my classroom is almost the reverse, is that I actually need climate education to make math more relevant for my students. Now they see a reason to learn math. They get excited because they want to argue with me and against me, actually, most of the time. They just want to compete and find their argument for why they think what they think. And so one of my students in the beginning of the school year really was direct. I've never met her because I taught only virtually, but she said that her therapist told her that math is useless, that like she doesn't need math in her everyday life and she's not going to use it. And so because I tied math into everyday environmental issues that she already cared about, she was like, oh, actually, I need math in order to understand what is just, what is fair, what needs to be changed. And this has been the biggest like mind shift for my students. Now, for my school as a whole, we were trying to think of new electives to create. And in the United States, or at least in the school that I'm working in, lesson planning is a huge burden. And we're like, us teachers, we're always so overwhelmed by preparing for our lessons. And so the last thing that we wanted was another elective course that we had to prepare for, that we had to do extra work for, especially when we're trying to do more self-care and you know, have a better balance in our work life. And so I offered them this platform, it's called Subject to Climate, where there are credible, free, engaging resources. And because there are these ready-made lesson plans, free resources that they could interact with, the teachers decided, okay, let's do that. Let's create a climate education elective. And it wasn't like, the conversation wasn't based on like, yes, this is so important, we need to do it. It was like, ooh, what can we implement that would be the least amount of work? And I know that's like not ideal, but it got in a climate education course, which may change their attitudes as they're learning about climate education. They'll see as a whole school how important it is.
Thank you so much, Nita. And I'm sure this is not the first time we're going to mention the issue of time, that there are so many things that are pressuring on teachers, but it's also about finding the space we actually have and the opportunities that are there to actually do something so it doesn't stop us. And with that, I'd like to move on to Anna and to Spain. She's a science teacher, and she has her colleague Irene, who's an English teacher, with her. But I'll start with the first quick short one, also for you, Anna. Do you think that every teacher can teach for climate action?
Yes, yes. First, buenas tardes from Galicia, Spain. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, let me say that I'm delighted to participate in this conversation on climate change. And then the answer is yes, yes. I think is necessary to teach climate change in every subject. But the curriculum is enormous, so the time is a big problem. I'm a science teacher, and I have a problem with the time. So I don't imagine a math teacher or art teacher. I think the solution is easy. All we need, the teacher, the schools, is a new subject called climate change, or as in Norway, the development, sustainable development. No, yes. Sorry by my English. It's necessary a new subject in order to have more time to develop climate actions with our students. Yes.
Thank you, Anna. And your English works perfectly well, even with the support. And you again address the issue of time, and that is a challenge, but you have done it anyway. We know. And I was so inspired by the work you have done. And I will encourage people to go and look at Anna's video too, and see how she and her students have transformed face masks and learned about recycling. But I'd like to ask you, what impacts or behavioral changes have you seen on your students when you did this work or other work on climate change?
Well, the change in our students has been amazing in all of them, but I like to speak 3 cases in particular. From the group of 6 students who work in this project, 2 are very shy and have always passed unnoticed. Now they can speak in public, participate in class, and have improved their academic performance because they are feeling more confident. Another case is one of the girls, Eva, at the beginning of the year was only interested on her looks, her friends, and was considering dropping out of school. Oh, how has it changed? Now she is the protagonist of one of our tutorials and the first one to advertise our social media. The perception as teacher has of her has changed too. Now she feels more comfortable at school and she's working harder in all subjects. Our challenges this year in the school is to organize workshops to teach how to make the folders for children between 3 and 16. And these students, my students, will be the teacher. The change in all of them are fantastic. Regarding the impact on our community, our project is getting a lot of attention both in and out of school. We appear in different media, such as radio, press, and both local and state TV. It was amazing, crazy days. What's more, we have participated in 2 science fairs in our region, Galicia, and we got an award in both. But the most important thing is that people who know about our folders are starting to make their own, which means 60 max per folder, 60 max per folder, which don't end up in the rubbish bin. So this is the most important. I invite you to read them with your students. I'm sharing the links to the tutorials in the chat room, my colleague Irene, and see how to speak about something important in all the projects and in the climate change.
Yes, I think in an ideal world, it would be ideal to be able to address all this issue and every other important issue in an interdisciplinary way. But I think it also takes its toll on teachers. The fact that we must first find a teacher who you get on well, to be your partner and help. Get all the teachers to get to have free time to organize meetings. It can be really exhausting. So although on the one hand, I think every subject should disappear and we should be able to teach all the competences interdisciplinary in an interdisciplinary way, in a real world, I think that the existence of a subject as such would make life for teachers much easier.
I think, thank you so much, Anna and Irene. I think you made some very good points. They're also both focusing how actually what you have done has had a significant impact on the students that you've worked with, and also in very difficult times.
Yes.
So you're reducing waste and you're creating purpose for your students in these difficult times. And I'm sure there are other teachers out there in other subjects that have also tapped into this, whether it's sewing face masks, if they are guiding their students on that and reducing waste in that end. But it's about how we can do them together. You also highlight the need that can be easy to say interdisciplinary, but you have to create the conditions so that teachers actually can work and implement interdisciplinary, both the curriculum and our ways of working the time. Great. I'm going to switch back to Nita for the next question. You've already you touched on it in your first question, but if you can elaborate a little more, what are the challenges that you have faced in teaching climate change in an interdisciplinary approach? Because I believe you have, in the way you have taught, and how were you able to cope with it?
Yes, thank you, Haldis. And I think I want to talk about the challenges outside of the classroom. I work with a community of students who are academically behind. And so when they come to me in the 7th grade, they actually test from 2nd grade level all the way to 7th grade level. And so some of the pushback that I get from my administration, from the educational leaders I work with, is that if they can't add, or if their English vocabulary is not up to the grade level, then how will we teach them about climate literacy, climate education, climate action when they are so academically behind? And my response to that is that we can leverage climate education to teach those fundamental skills, that our learning and teaching is not linear. It's very complex. And these students, despite the fact that they are academically behind, they know a lot about the environment. They have a connection with it. They have a bond with it. Whether that's healthy or not, this is something that we need to foster. And so inside the classroom, the challenge that I experience with teaching interdisciplinary lessons is that my students say, this is not math. I'm not in a math classroom because you're trying to teach me about food justice and transportation. So how is this math? They're not used to being taught math in this way. And honestly, like, teachers are still getting used to teaching math in this way. And so a lot of the challenge is managing this new dynamic, new relationship with how we can approach math and how we can use math to solve large problems in the world, to really get at the systems thinking.
Thanks a lot to that. You're into the systems thinking. I hear the math teacher, but of course we all live in systems, and everything is part of a greater system or cross-cutting systems, overlapping systems. So you're back to the interconnectedness, which also means interdisciplinary. I'll go back to Anna and Irene. You did highlight some challenges, but do you want to reflect more on the challenges that you've faced and how you were able to cope with them?
Okay, as I said before, I am a science teacher, and as such, it's my duty to include this topic in my curriculum. But I found that my main problem, I think, is time when climatic change is not included as such in our curriculum, but we can find topics that, in my opinion, are not as important or urgent. To overcome this problem, I do two things. First, I just ignore or barely talk about other units from my official curriculum and include the topic of climate change instead. Secondly, I developed these climate actions in the scientist laboratory. And what is this? Our school offers children different enrichment clusters, such as drama, orchard, radio, and mine, scientist laboratory. They are extracurricular activities children join according to their interests, and where they develop their creativity and strengths designing all kinds of projects. Last year, my kids made vertical gardens and folders from Faces Mask. They saw all the educational community how to make them and invite them to contribute reducing these new waste, because we have time. But I must add that both me and the children have spent a lot of our personal free time because they feel committed and empowered from finding a solution to an environmental problem. But it's not easy, it's not easy. I repeat the same, I think that the solution is easy. All we need is a new subject to develop those climate actions with our students. It's more difficult teach the official curriculum and time to develop these actions or this topic in this situation. It's difficult. Time is the main problem.
Time is a challenge. So we are very impressed of what you have been able to do. And I had a reflection on time when it comes to challenge, because you are a science teacher, but your project in a way is documenting what will become history. Through the binders, your students have a memory and documenting a time that they went through for the future. So it's interdisciplinary in so many respects. And I think now, based on what you have told us, Anna and Rini and Nita, that I would like to call on Dr. Nagata to have some of his reflections from his perspective on what you have presented here and through your videos, and perhaps also other videos that Dr. Nagata has looked at, and some reflections on this in relation to interdisciplinary teaching or other items you find interesting.
Hello, good afternoon and good evening to all the teachers and educators around the world. And my name is Nagata, working at the University of the Sacred Heart in Tokyo. And thank you very much, Anna and Anita, for sharing your insightful ideas and practices. I'm very impressed by your speeches. And I should say that if the audience, you do not have a look at their videos, you should. It's wonderful, and encourage, please have a look at the videos with your students or pupils. It's wonderful. And I'm sure they will encourage and empower your students to make actions, I think. And so let me go in. Oh, I heard just before the start of the this session, I just heard there were 45 videos selected or collected. So you have a lot of choices, and there are many, many pieces of wisdom in it. So I'm sure you can learn a lot from there. And so let me go back to the first questions. And I think I would say, I would answer yes. I think all the teachers should now teach climate change. But the thing is how to teach. That is a challenge. And looking at the videos, I haven't had a look at the 45, but nearly 20 I tried. But I have learned a lot because many of them, including Anna's and Anita's, they use mixed grade or interdisciplinary approach, or encourage us to use it. And I would say many of them are trying to challenge PBL, project-based learning. And I think that brings a success to many projects. But the point is that PBL, project-based learning, must be supported through whole school approach. So that is a point, I think. And I have noticed some of the videos bring the message. Actually, today we are missing one specialist practitioner from France. And I suggest also you should look at his school, College of Van Gogh, as far as I remember correctly. And it's explain about theoretically what whole school approach is about. And at the bottom of the chart, they show, you can see a phrase saying school culture of sustainability. School culture of sustainability. I think that's the essence of climate change education. So in order for us to nurture that culture at schools to be, we have to think about the methodology of teaching. And Anna's challenge with a waste mask, and also Anita's challenge of making a platform for other teachers, I think they're answering very wisely. But I should like to say that they both and other teachers appearing in the videos, they all put emphasis on the emotional aspect of climate change. Actually, one of the weaknesses of climate change education, or some of the people say ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, is that teachers tend to teach climate change or other global issues with knowledge-based approach. That's fine, but that is not enough. So we have to make the most of emotional aspect. And I didn't say that to Nita, but I was very, very impressed by a phrase in the video. You said, students should not be overpowered, by the knowledge, but they must be empowered by the knowledge. That is a beautiful phrase. And also they should be, I should like to add, they should be empowered by the knowledge and actions. So I think that your phrase reminded me of one of the neuroscientists or famous brain scientist phrase. I think his name is Dan Siegel. And he said, if we don't, our children fall in love with nature, they are going to have no motivation to save nature. And he also said, we want to raise our children who try to save the planet, not out of fear, but out of love. This is a very strong and clear message. And actually, I'm pretty sure Nita and Anna and other teachers in the videos of the climate action project have, of course, passion and love, and future generations who meet and learn with these beautiful teachers, I think they will naturally understand the essence of climate change education. I think that's the best way and very effective and relevant way in the pedagogy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagata. I'm sure many will agree with me. Those are very powerful words and very encouraging words. I love your quotes related to nature. And I can say from an interdisciplinary approach, that was one of my main motivations back in the beginning of the 1980s to train as a phys ed teacher, not to create athletes, but to create the love for and like for using your body and being outdoors. And then you have to learn about nature. It's all interconnected in this. So, and the quote from Nita on that our purpose is not to overpower students, but to empower them is also very powerful. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. But before that, we're going to do a little poll again. And then we're going to have a quick round with the panelists. And I am collecting the questions from the chat that I think we can address some of them. The poll 2, which is about to come here. What will you need as an educator to teach for climate action? Resource materials, training, more lesson planning time, support, other. And the other, you can also define in the chat. I see the blue lines jumping here. All are chosen. So it's ended. And if I look, and I'm sure you can see it on your school, you spread it across, but you sort of have the support from school leadership on the top. And I think that goes to something, I think it was Anna said, that although you have knowledge, will to do it, you can't do it on your own. You need the support from your leadership, from your colleagues that also can create circumstances to do it. We need training. We need to know the knowledge, although we need to respect the emotional aspect, as Dr. Nagata said. You need materials. You need more time, as we have referenced. So we need a lot, but we also know that a lot is being done. But what we need are about the ingredients. So my quick fire question to our panelists is, what are the key ingredients to teach climate change across subjects and grades, so that positive impacts can be felt even beyond the classroom. And when I'm posing this question, I'm thinking about the reference Dr. Nagata did to NITA, to how do we do this so our students aren't overpowered, but empowered? How do we do this so that we address the students that tell us they have fear, they're scared for their future and the impacts of climate change? Nita, you are muted. You want to start?
Yes, please. Thank you so much. And Dr. Nagata, I started smiling when you mentioned Dan Siegel, because the first 2 or 3 weeks of the school year, I talk about him and I talk about his work with relationship, reflection, and resilience. And this is key. This is key to shifting from being overpowered to being empowered. Right? We need to build healthy relationships with each other for that support, and also with the environment, with nature, and with learning about the issues, because it can be terrifying. It can be quite anxiety provoking. And so when we talk about all grade levels, sometimes I get asked, like, even in kindergarten, we have to teach this because they're very young. And so I just read about this article, this term called ecophobia, and there's like a checklist of how you present climate issues by age. So from 0 to 7, you have to present it a certain way. And then 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, and they follow child development. And so I'm still thinking about that article, but I think this is a really important question, because we don't want to start early on and create this doom and gloom relationship for our students. We want them, as Dr. Nagata said, to really love nature. And because they love nature so much, this is why they want to be part of the solution. And so one of the most stressful things in life is trying to solve something that you feel you can't control, right? And so how do we put that control, that power back into our students' hands? And also, how do we manage what we really can't control, what feels like we really can't? How do we manage that stress? And so the key ingredient, so that we have time for other questions, is that relationship building, because through relationship building, we foster resilience, and we also create opportunities for reflection.
Thanks a lot, Nita. Relationship building. Anna, key ingredients.
Okay, first, I totally agree with Dr. Nagata. Emotions are so important, especially with teenagers. I work with them, and it's so important. So the key ingredient is transmitting enthusiasm. It's not necessary the translator, enthusiasm, okay? And believe in what you are saying and doing. It's important. When you talk about climate change, give evidence about what is happening and focus the issue on the solutions, your students become the object of the focus and feel included. You must also teach them that it's not always easy to find solutions. Things don't turn well the first time you try, but we must never stop trying. It's so important. They are already sick and tired of hearing that it is a problem, that the government are not doing anything. We have to make them understand that small individual actions become great achievements, and that they can collaborate in that change. They mustn't expect us to do it for them. And always we have been able, excuse me, and I am in the school, and one child opening the door. All of this, all this emotion, all this enthusiasm, you always have to transmit with a smile on your face, supporting each and every idea they have and helping them making these ideas real. Well, I really hope I have been able to transmit my enthusiasm, and thank you so much for being here. That's all. Thank you.
You have certainly transmitted your enthusiasm, and I see from the chat that you've got support on how that is so important for us when we teach, because that comes across to our students too. But I've follow-up question for you, Anna, on that, because what you've mentioned before, the need for the ingredients to support you in doing it, and there is a question on whether what you have done was your personal initiative, your enthusiasm, or whether it was an institutional initiative.
No, this initiative was
The students. It was the
students,
students' idea.
the project started like 3 years campaign, no?
Yes, like
yes?
a 3-hour campaign.
3-hour campaign, yes. And when we work about this issue, this topic, we find the problem of the mask, and I always
Ask them.
I only ask them, and what is this? What can make with the mask? Please check in the media what is making another countries or students or people in the world with mask, like a waste. So Eva, the girl that was thinking about dropping out the school, she's addicted to the media, and she found a Korean student that made a chair with a mask, and the idea was okay, if they have to if they can they can make a chair, we can make another thing, perhaps folders, and with an iron we start. So it's not necessary
yes, the idea really came from the students. The only institutional support that we got was the ability to have a space where children can express themselves.
Okay.
That's fantastic, because it's a story of how things emerge bottom up. It's a story of student democracy, of students influencing their own education. And you have used your professional space as a teacher to build off on that in your teaching. Fantastic. I'd like to go back to Dr. Nagata with a question, because you mentioned when teaching that we very often enter it based on facts, based on knowledge for teaching. And there is a question to you on your idea on whether scientific terms, especially within physics in the question, should be used in climate education or not.
I would answer we should use, but we have to consider the development stage of children. That's it. That's the point. I think, to be honest, it's been a difficult time for teachers to talk about hopes nowadays. Looking at the data shown by the, for example, planetary boundary, I think it's a very important chart and very strong. It's got a very strong message in it. And I'm teaching it in my class at the university, yes. But I would never have taught the planetary boundary chart to the children under the 4th grade. So we have to take care of them, the emotional aspect. And some of the small children may get fear if they hear straight what Greta Thunberg said. Our house is on fire. That's very, scary. It is true, I believe, but we have to take care of the development stage of the children. And so I think Anna's practice challenge at her school is one of the good model of that caring approach to climate change. Can you think about making an upcycling mask out of the used, mask? It's very symbolic challenge. And one mask folder is made of, as far as I remember, was it 60? 60 pieces of mask, was it?
60.
Yeah.
60.
60, yeah, I was right,
per
thank you.
folder.
Yeah, but it's very meaningful. And also in the video you said, Anna said, self-esteem has risen through the project, and emotionally and academically. So that's very important message. And I think in a climate change education, I think knowledge matters. Knowledge is very important, but the knowledge with love will not remain in children for long. So we have to think about, traditional testing system. It doesn't fit to our challenge. So we have to think about the educational system as well. That's another challenge. But individually, in the NITA's learning materials and also Anna's project empowers the potential teachers because they are bringing hopes, and they are starting from what they have, what they used. And I think what is important in climate change education is to start from small but significant something significant. But we can start from something tangible, actual with students, so that we can learn, we can, different generations can empower each other. So intergenerational challenge is also another strong, important aspect of climate change education, I believe.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Nagata. And I think you there also touched on another question that has come in the chat, which asks the question of if storytelling method would be effective to understand climate change education, and also referencing that you could use experienced persons or elders. And to me, you partially just answered that is one way you can conduct an intergenerational dialogue. It is also a way of even tapping into the explicit knowledge that many indigenous peoples have around the world of preserving nature and earth, that then can be brought into today's world. But I think, Nita, you're doing mathematics. I would think, yes, you can even use storytelling in mathematics. And I listening to you, you were almost using storytelling when you are telling your story on the video. But I would also like to ask you, you use the example of fractions. Now, there are many other examples within mathematics. Your setting is the United States. and you referenced your colleagues. But we have questions in the chat, how can this support, or are there support materials for teachers in completely different contexts? Like there's a question from Uganda. Do you think as a teacher that your methodology can be used other places without great resources?
Thank you so much for this question. And I think this goes back to this idea of self-esteem and confidence, because at least in the United States, there's not only fear of learning the materials, but there's a fear of teaching the materials incorrectly. Especially, I can only speak for myself. When I first started trying to teach about, and teaching, like my experience and expertise is really in math. This is what I know. And so to step and cross disciplinary boundaries, I was so nervous about it. I was so nervous. And so when I think about the resources and the materials that are out there, we need it to be as entry level as possible. And we also need to tell teachers that it's okay to start anywhere with it. And like we've been saying, those small interactions, step by step, matter. And so when we take, for example, this idea of storytelling in other contexts, one tricky thing is to make sure we include voices that we haven't included in the past. So I was working with a teacher in Florida to talk about our national park system in America. And here we think that it was created, like our national park system is America's best idea. And that's the narrative that we've been taught. This is the story that we've been told, but this is very incomplete. This is not true. And we need to include those indigenous voices and other motives for creating the national park system. And so in civics, we can tie that in. In literacy, how do we read nonfiction text, character analysis? We can tie these topics in. And so right now, what I'm doing with these teachers around the world, we have around 30 teachers in our task force. We're trying to collaborate across disciplines. So a science teacher will collaborate with a social studies teacher, and together, using both of their expertise, they write one lesson. And we're just starting this. It's exciting and it's really challenging. So we're still developing it, but I think this is the right track. This is where we need to move, and then we share these lessons with the world for free.
And that's the key point. You share them with the world for free. Yes. So they can be used in Uganda or anywhere else, of course, being transformed by a professional into context. And I'm sure you'll succeed. The enthusiasm of all of you, of Dr. Nagata, of Anna, of Nita, and Irene there coming on with us, has inspired me, and I hope it has inspired everyone else. I want to thank everyone on the call who've posted questions in the chat. We've tried to answer some of them. Some have been answered directly in the chat. We will save all of them. And I remind you that there is a next chance. The next conversation will happen on the 20th of October at the same time, 2 p.m. Paris time. And we will remind you, post videos, send in your initiatives to the Global Teaching Insights platform and follow it, because that's how we share. That's how we become a professional community and inspire each other. And I have one last request of you, and that is that please take the opportunity to sign Education International's Manifesto on Climate Education, which calls on governments to include quality climate education as part of their national climate action pledges, and I would say their curriculum too, because that's one of the ingredients to support teachers. That is to give them the mandate to use their professional engagement, creativity, and knowledge to follow up. We'll provide the link for that too in the chat. And with that, and I know that people still have questions they haven't answered. I know people want to take the floor, but we're at the end of our hour. So thank you very much, everyone, once again. I hope you continue to have a nice day or evening wherever you are and continue the good work you are doing. Thank you.